Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Today, we're returning to the topic of Democratic Socialists and their agenda to destroy America. Plain and simple. That's what their agenda is. In the last episode, we looked at some of the basics. I covered their basic ideas like changing the entire government structure, giving everyone the Green New Deal and universal health care, and wiping college debt, and destroying all capitalist structures. And I explained how it would never happen because they also want to get rid of the Constitution. They're going to have a, quote, democratic Constitution that they're going to install. The problem is, as I said, when you get rid of our current Constitution, that gets rid of all of our rights, laws, government, pretty much everything. It's going to be anarchy. And all it takes is one person like myself going, I declare myself king, and I'm now king. That's it. They think you're going to transform the current government into something else, and there's this transition, and like that's how governments are made to. No, you will end everything. It'll be chaos. And you can't just suddenly say, oh, well, I have the government earmarked, it's mine, because there's no government structure that says that it's earmarked for you. So it's chaos. And that's it. It's done. Their plans will never happen. Um, Not to mention, and I didn't say this, I thought of it afterwards, they want to get rid of our current Constitution, which has been approved by states. Back in the day, it was approved by a handful of states, and then other states who joined it willingly. They want to get rid of this government that was agreed upon and written by a committee of representatives from the colonies and force on us a democratic constitution, which according to them will just automatically be made legit, I guess. So let me repeat that. They want to get rid of something we all agreed upon back in the day and force on us something else that they want. Whatever happened to those no kings protests? Sounds just like what a king would do. But we all know that woke liberals and democratic socialists are all little authoritarians who love violence and love putting people down. It's not that they're trying to build people up. It's not that they're trying to make the world a better place. It's just they hate people and they're angry at life and they just get off on putting people down. I truly believe that. I've met some very, very woke liberals and they just get off, quite literally get off on putting everyone down. They like being in control. They like being the boss. They like bossing people around. It has nothing to do with improving the world. It has nothing to do with helping you in your life. It has nothing to do with personal growth. It literally is just them enjoying power and violence and hurting people. I really, really believe that. That's all it is. I think a minority actually really care about making changes, but I don't think those people who are in that minority want to destroy our entire government and create a situation of chaos, because that wouldn't be fixing anything, that would be destroying everything. And as I said, the end result would probably be people pulling out their guns to declare who is the rightful king of the new America. So that was the last episode. Today, we're going to dive back in with some more things. I got on their website and looked up a bunch of stuff they did. So, what I want to do today is fill in the gaps with additional things I didn't talk about. And I may have some ideas that I didn't say too that I want to add into this. Basically, the world they want to create, we're all going to have apartments that are going to be $100 a month. We're going to have no health care, no mortgages, no college debt. We're going to work 32 hours a week. We're all going to go out for walks in the morning with our dog, spend the afternoon writing poetry, work just a few hours a week, and life is going to be wonderful. And some centralized government is going to dictate everything. That's basically their plan. It won't happen. What I want to do is now read something from their website on that plan and what they see life as and the ideas behind their thing. And I'm going to comment as I'm reading, and we'll go beyond this little bit into some of their explicit things. I may repeat myself from some stuff from the last show, but it'll just be to flesh out context. So they wrote that the world is in chaos, but for the bosses, it's all going to according to plan. Actually, I say that all the time. The New World Order is leading us on. They write, we can see their plan in the countless heartbreaking images coming out of war zones like Beirut, Gaza, and Tehran. We can hear it in the rumble of bulldozers making way to build detention camps and data centers. Have to stop right now. What detention camps are we talking about? For immigrants? Or the liberal idea that we're going to put gays and lesbians in detention camps? There are people who literally believe that. So that's a very vague statement, and it's a very frightening statement. Well, they're building detention camps. Well, what are they? Notice the little propaganda here that they're pushing. As I said in the last episode, they probably write their stuff on the website with a committee and really work over it. But when you read into the details and ask questions, you realize it falls apart. So my first question is, what are these detention camps? What are they? Are they just immigrant camps like Obama had and Biden and Trump? In that case, okay, no big deal. Are we talking about detention camps for who, though? Vagueness scares people. It's a way of creating shock and awe. Anyways, let's keep going. We can feel it in the air as the summer heat becomes unbearable. A sly reference to climate change. And in the pits of our stomachs when faced with the price of gas and rent. We're promised magical technology with AI, but in reality, the bosses lay us off and track our every move. The billionaire class is dividing workers against each other, and it's making us desperate and miserable. Yeah, the essence of what they say I generally agree with. But let's keep going. The political and economic system under which we live is built on private ownership and profit at all costs. As capitalism fails to solve problems of its own making, it turns to right wing authoritarianism. Does it, though? Does it really? I don't know if it does. Does it really? I don't see our country moving necessarily to right wing authoritarianism because of capitalism, because if that was really true, wouldn't we be a right wing authoritarian government now for at least a century, if not more, because we've had capitalism since day one? But yet we seem to not be in an authoritarian right wing situation, and we have Democratic presidents and liberal presidents and um, conservative presidents. So it doesn't really feel like that's actually what happens to capitalism is we all become right-wing authoritarian rule. And anyways, right-wing authoritarian rule would probably destroy capitalism because it removes everything and creates this pyramid. So again, shock and awe with vague facts. Okay, let's keep going. Big business makes deals with the government to line their pockets. I've said this already, that big business is the fifth branch of government. And politicians stoke hatred between working people. That is true. We see that all the time with liberals. Democrats, too. Republicans, too. But liberals these days are making it into an art form. Instead of offering real solutions to unemployment and cost of living, they attack immigrants, communities of color, and trans people. Oh, it's the Republicans who do the attacking. It's not Democrats. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I live in reality, not under your rock, so I think the Democrats are actually guilty too. To continue, rather than fixing our broken healthcare system, they push snake oil and circulate conspiracy theories. Yeah, gonna disagree with that. Again, vague statements here. The Republicans are in on it. The Democratic Party is asleep at the wheel, and both are funded by the same criminal class of billionaires and war profiteers. Well, certainly there are war profiteers behind it, but I think they're blaming Republicans in this little talk more than Democrats. And if you really think Democrats are in on it, well, they don't. They just think they're asleep at the wheel. They see their own party as innocent, I guess. I don't know. I fucking don't know. Anyways, Democratic Socialists know that no one has to live like this. If we lived in a classless society and governed ourselves, we could freely build a world without war or poverty. Okay, let's dissect this sentence. First of all, notice they said world. They didn't say America. So, they're not looking at a complete revolution of America only. No, the Democratic Socialists want to destroy all the world. They want to take the entire world underneath them. Their talk of destroying the Constitution and destroying the US government is only the first stage because that's the government closest to them. Sort of like in Israel, Hamas is battling Jews because if they went after the Zoroastrian community, there wouldn't be much of a fight. The Jews, though, are their biggest competitors, for lack of a better word. And then will come the Christians. You go after your biggest enemy. If we were in Japan right now, we'd be talking about Buddhists. America is the enemy of these democratic socialists. They're trying to create revolution here first, and then they will go to the entire world. Right here, it says if we lived in a classless society and governed ourselves, we could freely build a world without war. Now, you might say that, oh no, they mean world in a figurative term. They don't mean it completely across the globe, but I think they do. They're just not saying that because they know that's a little bit too much. That's the next step. You have to have the inner revolution before the world revolution versus having the world revolution. Was it Trotsky versus Lenin and old arguments that go back in time? But I really believe they mean revolutionizing the entire world. Because how can I live in a classless society and yet still look out on the horizon and see all those countries suffering under class? I have to revolutionize them. I can't let them live as the way they are. I have to go down there. So I believe that's their goal. Okay, the next part of this sentence I want to destroy is we live in a classless society and we govern ourselves, so there'll be no classes. Well, there are classes in America, but if you compare our society to India, we look almost classless. If you compare our society to Japan, we look almost classless. But if you could, Japan actually has classes. But if you compare them to India, it doesn't look like Japan does at all. It's all sort of relative. I think in terms of freedom, Canada, America, we don't have classes like other countries, but we do sort of, they develop under this capitalist economy. Classes develop. Even in Russia, they had classes. They say they didn't, but they did. Because classes are a hierarchy of people, and that hierarchy often comes from people relating to each other. I am your boss. I put myself in a above class. It happens sort of naturally. I have more than you. I put myself in another class. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm in a capitalist society. It just sort of is this thing that happens with hierarchy. The lion takes care of the cubs or gets rid of another lion. There is hierarchies in the animal kingdom. So the thing of class, while it may sound scary, is not something foreign to us. And I do not believe that we could have a country of, I don't know how many people are in this country, and have no classes. I believe there would be some classes that would develop through something. They would develop naturally through the relationship of each other. Somehow, somebody always looks down on somebody else. It always happens, and somebody always wants what somebody else has. I don't think this whole classless society is possible at all without changing innate parts of human behavior. So there we have it, folks. They want to destroy all of society in America and the world and change human behavior. That's the big picture. That's what they're actually telling you here. Anyways, let's keep going on this. They say we could build a world where no one suffers for their race, gender, or religion, and everyone is free, equal, and cared for. This is the same group that hates Christians, by the way. Building this world is the guiding star of our movement. When we labor for our common good instead of private profit, we can all have a secure and dignified life and use our time and talents how we wish. Uh, Yeah, I mean, the libertarians say things like this, and we all at the end of the day going, you'd like a utopia that will not exist. It's utopian talk. Let's keep going. They say to achieve this future, our class must organize. So essentially, the class must organize to create a classless society. I guess you use what you have. I don't know. The Democratic Socialists of America is building a party whose goal is a democratic society of the working class. Now, here's my question. So we're going to have a democratic society of the working class. Well, what happens later in the future when we have this classless society? Won't that mean we no longer have a working class? Isn't that the goal, is not to have a working class? So who is then going to be in control? You can't then say, well, the working class people, because we live in a classless society. You see? How how is that going to work? Also, if you have a working class and they're going to lead the new society, that means you have to have, I guess, a class above them. So there's still going to be some hierarchy that they're against. And who is in the working class and who isn't? The boss from my business doesn't get even close to what the boss of the local hospital gets. So is my boss working class or is my boss administrative? And compared to the hospital, she's not even close. So I guess she'd be working class. But she used to drive a FedEx truck, she told me. But now she's the office manager for my business. So she was working class. Is she still? And once she promotes up, does she no longer have the ability to run? So many questions here I have. So many questions I have. And that's the problem with the Democratic Socialist platform. It asks lots of questions, and the outcome is just utopian talk that to me feels very impossible. As I said, we're just reading this introductory paragraph where I'm almost done with it, and then we'll get into the actual details of what they want. Continuing on from my last episode. Anyways, they write, our enemies are not just individual bosses, but the entire global system of capital. There we go. I said earlier they were looking for a world revolution, and this is the proof. So it wasn't figuratively we're wanting to change the world, from Maine to Washington, California to Florida. No, they want a global revolution. They want to destroy capitalism globally. They want to change the governments of every country. They want to get rid of everything and have a world where everyone lives the same life and acts the same and no one does anything for fear of being punished. It really feels like they want everyone to be alike. That's what they're saying. They don't want individuals and groups in here. They want every country in the world to be alike and to be on the same page. Think about that. How else will you have what they plan? They're going to go into every single country and go, Peru, what type of government would you like? Brazil, now let's talk about your government structure. Nope. They just have one plan they're going to roll out. America's the trial ground for it. And then every country is going to look alike. And this is the party that cherishes diversity. But yet they want us all to have the same government structure. They don't really like diversity. As I said at the beginning, woke liberals are little authoritarian dictators who love violence. They also don't like diversity. They hate diversity. Because traditionally, I believe they were never one of the cool kids. And so they now have turned being an outsider into something, whatever. Anyways, they continue to write. Let me start from the beginning of the sentence. Our enemies are not just individual bosses, but the entire global system of capital, not just this or that cop, judge, or president, but the entire anti-democratic structure of our society. We are workers fighting to transform society, to win the battle for democracy, draft a new constitution, and create a democratic socialist republic. There we go. That's their goal. They just contradicted themselves. So they want to fight for democracy, but yet they want to create a republic. We currently have a republic with democracy, so they just want the same thing, I guess. But they want it good for them because they feel it's not good for them. They want to draft a new constitution, even though the current one gives them all the freedoms to say that they want to draft a new one without calling them treasonous. They want to win the battle for democracy, even though they don't really want democracy. They really, really don't want democracy. They want something else. They want a socialist world. But I get a kick out of this. They want to create a democratic socialist republic while fighting for democracy, even though we have a republic. That's just like, they don't listen to themselves. They really lack self-awareness. So the Democratic Socialists of America have written this program for ending the capitalist oligarchy and creating a real democracy. There's a reason we have a republic, folks. But they don't know history because, oh, history's racist. Anyways, some of these demands may be won under our current system, but we know complete victory will require, here we go, folks, building a new society from the ground up. That's what I said in my last episode. It is now in their own words. They want to build a new society from the ground up. That means everything. And they've already said it will be global. It's not just changing a few government positions. You need to be afraid. Everything must go. So they say we push these demands to their fullest extent today so we can fight for their fullest realization in a socialist future. And that is the introduction. Now we're going to get into the details of what that will look like. And please add what I say today on top of last week's episode. So here we go. Are you ready for this? This is what your new society is going to look like when these little authoritarians force it on you. As I already said, this new constitution isn't going to be something that you're going to ratify. They're going to force it on you because they are kings. Also, I do want to say I saw online some folks were talking about how this revolution would happen without violence. And literally, I saw someone online say that America is so behind what I'm about to read to you. And this is what Americans want. Most Americans, the ones who are smart and aren't MAGA, most Americans, that we can imagine within the next few years, if even this year, Democrat socialists will come to be voted into office. They'll become our governors, our congresspeople, and within a few years, someone literally said, we can imagine that 99% of Congress will be Democratic Socialists. And then they will just vote themselves out of work and vote the president out of work and vote the judges out of work and vote in a new constitution. That's how it's going to happen. It's going to be a peaceful transition because we're all going to vote Democratic Socialists. Yeah, when that happens, that means they've rigged the election. Very scary utopian plans. I have to confess I was a libertarian for a long, long time. From college through Gary Johnson's second campaign when I realized they were wasting their time and had their heads up their asses. But I'd already begun to pull away from the libertarians because I realized that a lot of their ideas are solid. Yeah, I can agree with that. I can agree that big business is an enemy. I can agree with this. I can agree with that. As I already read, there's some things the Democratic Socialists say which I agree with and I think are true. But how do you want to create the outcome? The libertarians want to go in the opposite direction of what we're about to read, which is fine, and I prefer less over more. But I also realized that so much of what they wanted became utopian. It became assuming people are going to act on their best nature. I don't believe they will. As I said in my last episode, with the example, people fight on Black Friday for a TV at Walmart. Do you really think if we get rid of a lot of laws, they won't do that? No, they'll fight even more because the cops won't show up. Whereas I said in the last episode, if you defund the police, do you really think they'll get along at Walmart? No, they just will keep fighting because the police won't be there. So it became very utopian for me, and I had to walk away from the libertarians. It was just like, you guys are clueless. And then when they brought in Joe and Spike, to me, they just fell off the edge of the earth. That's what I get from these people. Yes, their ideas might be fine, and I agree with them. I agree with some Democratic ideas too, some Republican, whatever ideas. But the outcome, I think, is more destructive and relies on a human nature that doesn't exist and is so utopian, it might happen on a desert island of 50 people, but it can't happen globally. It can't happen it can't happen. It just can't happen. I had someone once argue to me, well, what is human nature? Human nature is a construct, and I'm not going to go down that stupid road where you're trying to be so smart that you can't have a conversation. You know exactly what human nature is, and we all agree on what it is, and we can agree on the different parts of it. Okay, I think human nature is that people are violent and they're also good, and given the opportunity, there will be people who will create violence and do violence if they think they can get away with it. That's human nature. There will be others who will choose not to. That's human nature. I think we can agree upon that. Anyways, I'm going to take a drink and then we're going to dive in to the rest of this stuff. All right, here we go. Let's do this for the second half of the show. So they want to expand public resources to support, quote, recreation, learning, and social spaces accessible to all. It's very vague. So we're going to create public resources to support recreation, learning, and social spaces. What does that mean? Are we talking parks? Are we talking playgrounds? Are we talking schools? And what is I mean, accessible to all? Well, do you know of any parks in your city that are only accessible to certain people? Do you know of any playgrounds which are only accessible to certain people? This isn't the 1950s where there was the black and white. This isn't parts of uh, Middle East where Muslim or Christian or Jewish. I think we already have this. So they want social public spaces accessible to all, but we already have that. Unless you fear that if you go into it, there's a MAGA person sitting there, and that's just your own brain. They want to establish a paid family leave for all workers, plus, as I said in the last episode, a 32-hour work week with full pay and benefits, so everyone will have benefits with a 32-hour work week in a non-capitalist society, which means that we will have healthcare companies just contributing healthcare to everybody. We'll all have free healthcare. We're all going to have it. It's going to be universal free healthcare. Healthcare provided by companies that can't make a profit. I'm just wondering how much the healthcare is going to cost for each of us, since we're only going to be working 32 hours a week, and we know the cost of hospital bills is really high. So, God, our healthcare costs might be like most of our salary, but we won't pay for it. I don't know. I guess government will pay for it. Government will pay these nonprofit companies to provide healthcare to us. I feel like that doesn't really work. That something is going to go wrong there. They also want a living minimum wage. So we're all going to work 32 hours at a minimum wage that can support all of us. So I guess we'll all be making $200 an hour. And we'll all have full benefits. We'll only work 32 hours and write poetry books for the rest of the time. And as I said in the other one, they want rent caps. So I guess we're all going to be paying $100 in rent every month or something like that. I don't know. How do you figure out what a livable minimum wage is in a non-capitalist society where the government is literally paying for everything? I don't know if it says it here, but in the last episode I mentioned how they won't even have grocery stores charging for food. You won't have to pay for groceries. You don't have to pay for anything. I'm figuring our taxes will be at least 100% in this system, and we won't have any money. I don't know. I just don't understand how you can carry out everything they want. Um, how it work, really. I don't know. They also want to provide free quality public education from pre-K to college and cancel all student debt. So your kindergarten will not be free, because even though it already is, it will still be. But your college will also be free. So now kindergarten through high school will be free, which it already is, but you won't pay for college and will never have student debt. So all colleges will now be non-profits because they won't be able to make money in a uh, non-capitalist society. Of course, that'll be banned. They won't be able to make anything, and their professors probably won't be able to be paid a lot, but it's all going to be free, so we'll have no debt. The colleges, if they do charge us, the bill is going to go directly to the government, which is going to tax us. But we're all going to be living on this minimum wage that we can live on. So we're going to have lots of money because, a livable minimum wage is never the basic. It's always like you're going to have extra money, but our taxes are going to be so high to pay for this. So essentially, I'm only a little bit in this. I feel like they're already asking for things that we already have, and they're going to tax us to death. Because how are we going to pay for what they want? Free healthcare, free everything? Okay, we can defund the police, we can defund the military, which they want, but how are we going to pay for free healthcare for everybody? What healthcare companies want is going to want to exist in this environment for starters. So it's probably the government's probably going to have to be our healthcare provider. Free schools, free everything, free college. Everything's going to be free in this new society, except for that little bit of rent, because I guess you still have to pay rent in the future free society. But it'll be really small, and we'll all be making a great money from companies that can't make a profit. It just feels like at some point very quickly, somebody's going to go bankrupt, or somebody's not going to have any money. That's what I feel the plan is. It's the bankruptcy of America. I think that's what I'll call this new thing from the Democratic Socialists, the bankruptcy of America. Anyways, let's keep going. They want to guarantee universal health care. There will be no cost to individuals, it says, and you will have, haha, what a surprise, complete access to reproductive and gender affirming care. So we can all transition. And they want to expand healthcare access and quality, which is a good thing. I totally agree with that, by investing in new public hospitals and clinics. So note, they're going to build more hospitals and they're going to build more clinics that will be all publicly owned. So our healthcare industry will be publicly owned, paid for by tax money, because that's how, I guess, you fund these things. Or I guess there'll be private investors, but if you're a private investor, that's really something in a capitalist structure, because that means you're going to be making money if they're doing well with all the transition operations, and we can't have that. So yes, I don't really know how we would have private investors in a non-capitalist system that can't make money. They're just going to tax us, I guess, just taxes, or they're just going to print endless money. They won't tax us; they're just print endless money. And so all medical education and training will be public and free. So I guess anyone can become a doctor and you don't have to pay for it, even though I'm not sure what public means. Because I don't think, does that mean anyone can apply to become a doctor? I mean, right now I can apply to any medical school in the country. Are there private medical schools only for certain people, like only for men and only for women? It's very vague. As we've pinpointed so far, they don't really give details of what they're criticizing. And this is all very utopian. And I understand that listening to me, you might think I'm very arrogant talking today and very ultra critical, but, and maybe I am, but also when you start dissecting this, you see how clueless this plan is. It is beyond clueless. It is destructive and clueless and utopian. So if I'm being arrogant, it's because I've studied history and I've studied countries and cultures, and I've lived in a couple different countries. And I don't think America is as bad as they say, but what they would do is destroy it. And you can point to, Norway and say, oh, well, look, they have this and they have this, but that's a smaller country than us. And they don't have all the public things that we have. So you can point to Norway how they have free college, for example, or maybe they have a really reduced college, but they don't have forced 32-hour work weeks. They don't have all this other free stuff. So when you add on all that other free stuff, you can't then point to Norway because no country is doing what they want. It's probably going to be impossible. Well, maybe not. It may not be impossible. We just might all be living in dumpster heaps because there'll be no money to upscale our apartments. There'll be no money to build nice schools. People won't be motivated on some level. It's going to be a dumpster fire. So if I sound arrogant, it's because you can't help but look at this and see the dumpster fire. And I understand the need for change, and I totally understand the desire to have a better life, and it seems like life sucks. I got it. But is destroying everything from the ground up and creating a utopian environment that will be bankrupt and probably create just as many problems as we have now really the solution? Or is fixing things? That's the great thing about this world, is because we have all these different governments, all the governments they want to get rid of. and we learn from each other. I can see what Australia is doing by getting rid of guns, and I'm going, yeah, no, I don't want to get rid of guns in my country. I can see what England is doing by welcoming in immigrants and making patriotism illegal, and I can know, okay, well, in this country, we're not going to do that. We're going to learn from these other countries. That's the great thing about having all these diverse forms of government. We can learn from each other. We can learn what life is like under Sharia law, and we can go, no, not in my country. If we didn't have these things to learn from, we might then decide to do stuff. But the world is sort of like a large experiment, and we have all these little experiments going on. We can see California under Democrat, Texas under Republicans. We can see what happens. And while it's not fair to see the world like that, it's not fair that some people have and some people don't. In terms of wanting to build a best society or moving your country to a progressive or better future, progressive in the general state, it is nice to have all these examples. It is nice to have history. It is nice to learn from each other, and we can see what works and what doesn't work. So yeah, people are victims of a grand experiment. But it's kind of nice to have a grand experiment, because otherwise we all look alike, and those countries have self-destructed that create that. Anyways, let's keep going. So they believe that housing is a human right. We won't get into a discussion of rights. And they're going to build publicly owned, quote, social housing. Now, I do not know what social housing means, but again, you can point to Norway, how they have free college, but I wonder if they're building all the housing for everybody. So much money is going to be put out, and this is all going to be publicly owned in a non-capitalist society. I guess we'll all be investors on some level or something, or we'll all, I don't know, or because we all pay. I don't really know how this will work. Do I publicly own buildings in California, even though I'm in New York? I don't know. And all public housing. It's all going to be public housing, social housing. Are we gonna share the same living room? I don't know. So they also want to strictly regulate investment properties. Okay, so there we go. If you're going to regulate investment properties, I assume that means both what tenants can do and what landlords can do and what money you can make. So we're all going to invest in these properties and these hospitals, but we're not going to make any money from it. They're going to have universal rent control, as I said, and they're going to guarantee right to counsel for all tenants. But they're going to regulate us, but then they're going to guarantee right to counsel under this new legal system that they're going to establish, where the judge, as I mentioned in the last episode, or the Supreme Court is going to be under the Senate. The Senate is the leader of the country, and you can only imagine the corruption that will trickle down. It's really like reading their plan. It's like, well, we want to fix these things that are issues right now, but here's the big picture. But if you go into that big picture, the issues that we have right now may not exist. So you're trying to create a big picture while also fixing problems now. And then in this big picture, does it have those problems? I guess you're still going to fix those problems. There's no sense of perspective here. Okay, keeping going. They also want to end the legacy of slavery. So I guess don't read history or something. And colonialism. They want to end colonialism. I guess that means they're going to force Puerto Rico to become a state. And I mean, are they going to go over to England and tell England to go fuck themselves and get rid of all? I mean, this is part of our history. And yes, there is racism, but there's also hatred of other people. Liberals hate people a lot. Are we going to end liberal hate? Because that's, I mean, the legacy of slavery. Oh, reparations. I bet that's what it means. So they're going to reinforce discrimination laws. So we already have discrimination laws, but they're going to make them even stricter. So basically, if I tell a black person something and they don't like it, I'll be now brought to jail. Is that how this works? They're going to honor all tribal treaties and tribal sovereignty. So the tribes will now be on their own, I guess. Also, are we no longer honoring tribal treaties these days? Maybe not. I don't know. Here it is. They are going to enact reparations and massively invest in good jobs, quality housing, and infrastructure. for neglected minority communities. That's right. If you're black, you're going to get tons of money in this non-capitalist society where millionaires are the enemy. But you might get $1,000,000. But you're a minority, and I can't criticize you because there's going to be a double amount of discrimination laws. Also, you will get the good housing, the good public social housing. You're going to get the good stuff, not the bad stuff. And there's going to be an infrastructure for you. Oh, that's interesting. And you're going to be in a neglected minority community. Well, here's the thing. Once you give all these people in this neglected minority community $1,000,000, great houses and businesses up the wazoo, and all this money, they're not neglected anymore. Not in the least. Quite the opposite. They're going to be your ruling class. Or they're going to be a special class in your classless society, which is going to be racist. It's going to be a racist society because I guess everyone will benefit, except basically it's going to be, you know what it's going to be? Everyone's going to benefit except if you're a white man. Then you're going to get dumped on, but everyone else is going to be a minority, I guess. A little subtle things here that you just ask so many questions about this Democratic platform. You can't help but ask questions. So here we go. As I said before, they want to demilitarize police departments and defund the police and disempower police unions and redirect that funding to public services. Okay, that's interesting, but police have value. Yet to see a society that does not have police for a reason. They want to fully abolish the police eventually and the prison system, which they say protects the rich and jails the poor. Yeah, I understand that. Certainly, Harvey Weinstein is just being protected, and Bill Cosby is just being protected. If only we got rid of them, and they're going to abolish the prison system and abolish the police state. So we're not going to have any authoritarian thing that will. Okay, let's back up here. So they're going to have laws. They're going to have. We've already said that in the rental situations, they'll have lawyers we can go to, and we're going to have anti-discrimination laws. But we're not going to have police, and we're not going to have prison. So when an anti-discrimination law I feel is being broke, who do I call? I can't call the cops. I guess I'll call a therapist, and then I'll go up in front of a judge and go, Your Honor, I didn't say that. I didn't do that. Well, he's not going to send me to jail because there won't be any jail. So I guess punishments will, are we going to start killing people now or just fining them money? Pay $1,000,000. Because of course in this classless society where you don't have to pay for everything and everything is free, there's still going to be prison fines, I guess. I don't really know. It's very convoluted. Sort of like a committee wrote this and just everybody in the committee got to contribute to it and they didn't want to remove anything because God, if we remove that because it doesn't make sense, we'll piss off that committee person. But that's what happened. So they're also going to treat drug addiction and mental illness as health issues, not crimes. Well, actually, we don't treat mental illness as a crime and we don't treat drug addiction as a crime. We try to help these people. We try to help them a lot. Our needle exchange programs are not about treating them as criminals. It's about trying to get them help. If we actually treated drug addicts as criminals, we would be arresting all the 10 cities in America. They'd be gone tomorrow. And if we treated mental illness as a crime, well, given, what is it, 60% of liberals consider themselves having a mental illness, that would be a lot of people in prison. We don't do that. This is not the state of our society. There are people who are mentally ill and then commit crimes, so we treat them as criminals. But we don't just treat mental illness as a criminal thing and drug addiction. This clearly, to me, feels like someone who is mentally ill and got in trouble with the police and now is trying to seek revenge. And they're mentally ill enough not to realize that the problem was them. It wasn't the mental illness, it was their actions. So we don't do this at all, but I guess they want to end what we don't already do, or they don't quite see how society is working. They want to also end qualified immunity and empower civilian oversight bodies with real authority over the police. So eventually they're going to get rid of the police and civilians are going to police each other. I'm going to let you see in your head how that's going to work out at the end of the day. Oh, and I'll give you an example of anyone live in a condo association or an HOA, and there's that one person in the group who's just always causing trouble. Always causing trouble. My parents live in a condo, and there's this one woman out of the 50 buildings. 50 units, who was so difficult. My dad served as president, vice president, um, and after a few years, he was so done. They sold the condo and moved to the condo next door just to get rid of this one woman who nobody could handle. But in the future, we're going to let civilians be their own police force. So you can see, yeah, this is going to work out. This is going to work out really well, folks. So they also want feminism for all. You know, the thing that has made women lonely in their middle age and stopped the dating world. So quote, socialist feminism, which isn't just feminism, it's socialist feminism, fights for, quote, queer liberation. That's right, folks. If I am a man who says I'm a woman, feminism fights for me. Interesting how feminism doesn't fight for women, it fights for queer liberation. This also says that it fights for the freedoms of all, quote, working class women. So therefore, if you are a millionaire woman like Oprah Winfrey, queer feminism doesn't fight for you. Even though I guess she's an oppressed minority and needs reparations. But Ellen DeGeneres, a white woman. She is wealthy, very wealthy. I don't think she would be considered working class. So I guess this won't be fighting for her. She's not working class, but she is queer. So it's going to be about her liberation because she's not liberated. I guess she probably needs reparations too. But anyways, it's interesting. Yet again, we see that the government is going to be run by the working class. And we're going to have queer socialism, which is going to fight for working class women. But yet they want a classless society. So what is this working class group that you keep fighting for in a classless society? Complete contradiction in what they want. This is like a stand-up comedy routine. I'm not talking about my jokes. I'm not about this thing. It's just so chaotic and going in every single direction. They also want to stop gender violence and end policies that oppress bodily autonomy and intimate life. You know what that means. Including patriarchal restrictions on abortion, childbirth and child raising, gender expression and transition, marriage and divorce. So they are going to put laws on your sex life. Now, you know the laws will be, well, anyone can transition, but the other side of that law is you can't stop it. So there's going to be a group that is going to be allowed to do something and then a law against another group. The law will actually say you're not allowed to stop that person from transitioning. That's how these laws are going to be. So you can't stop an abortion. You can't, I don't know, restrictions on childbirth and child raising. I don't have kids, so I don't know what they're referring to as that. Um, Restrictions on gender expression. I don't know if, do we really have any in America? Do we have any restrictions on gender expression? No, we just don't want men in women's restrooms. We don't want men in women's sports. But we don't care if you wear a dress. The interesting thing about what they want is they should try this in the Middle East, where they, because that's part of the global world they want to overthrow. They should go to the Middle East. They should go to Afghanistan and say, hey, we're going to end all your restrictions on all of the above. I'd like to see how that works out for them when they give these Orthodox Muslims plans of that goes against the Quran. I'd like to see. Please send me a postcard from your deathbed. They also want to ban sex discrimination and ensure fair compensation and support for all forms of labor, including care work. So this probably goes back into the women make less than men, but we know that's not true. That's been debunked. Sex discrimination, I could talk about this a lot, but I really feel like they are going to control you and they want to allow anything, which is fine. I don't care if you transition. I know people who are trans, gay, and lesbian, and I don't really care if it makes you happy. The problem I have is when you start enforcing laws to stop other people. So if I disagree with transitioning, a 5-year-old, okay, I don't think they're an adult according to any other measuring of an adult, so they shouldn't be allowed to do that until they turn 18. That might be my view, for example. Now, once you turn 18, you can cut off and add to and do anything you want. You can stick horns in your head. You can have boobs. You can have 3 boobs. I don't care. If you are my friend and you say, please call me Caesar, I will happily call you Caesar. You're my friend. I don't care. But if you're 5 years old, well, you're probably not going to be my friend at 5 years old. But if you're 5 years old, I don't consider you adult. In that case, I'm going to stop you from doing that because I believe it's for your best interest to wait. According to what they want, no, I guess probably when you're 5 years old, you can do whatever you want. The law will then be against me. I won't be able to express my opinion on you. That's what these laws are going to be. So basically, they're going to ensure that many people in the society who have a differing point of view won't be allowed to express that point of view. There are some things that's good for. We got rid of sex and gender discrimination in the workplace, which was great. Secretary doesn't have to sleep with her boss, unless she wants to. I'm not going to stop anyone from having sex, but to get a raise, she doesn't have to. We assume, we hope. Um, so there are some things that are good, but they want so much that is controlled, and it will be ensuring that some people can't do what they want, so others can do what they want, instead of having more of a laissez-faire approach or a more libertarian approach, which is what I agree with. Hopefully everything I just said made sense on some level, because I'm trying to approach everything they said here in a big picture versus detailing it. So let's keep going. As I said in the last episode, they also want a Green New Deal. These workers in this class of society are going to lead a democratic transition to a green future and pass a federal jobs guarantee. But you only work 32 hours a week, just remember. The workers in this class of society are going to implement a massive investment in sustainable, publicly owned, yet again, energy and transit infrastructure. We're going to phase out fossil fuels and reclaim and repair our Earth's resources for all. So they're going to do a massive investment in sustainable, publicly owned energy. But can you have investments in a non-capitalist society yet again? So basically, it feels like in this one, they're going to create a sustainable future using capitalism, but then at some point eradicate all capitalist structures. So all those investments are gone. You're not going to make any money from your investment. So we're going to use capitalism to get rid of capitalism. It's kind of how this feels. I don't know. It's all very confusing. Great. You wanna fix the climate. Cool. They want to destroy society in order to do it. Remember, it's not just publicly owned energy and transit, which may improve the transit systems and a lot of things. It's something else. And we're going to phase out fossil fuels, which means cars. If you don't have fossil fuels, how do you run your car? Likely on a car battery, probably. But will any of us be able to afford an electric car? Or will it all be free? We'll just be given cars. I don't know. But there's a big hint there that those gas guzzling things we drive will not exist, but that's okay. We'll all ride the bus to work. Or we'll walk, or we'll be at like 1800 again. So they also want to end the U.S. war machine, something quoted by numerous politicians over the years, from Democrats to Republicans, by defunding the Department of War, as I said in the last episode, and that's the day someone will bomb us. They want to end all foreign wars and close overseas military bases. So we're just going to stay out of everyone's business, and they're going to do what they want, and I guarantee it won't end up as well as we think it will. Yes, we can point to George Washington and we can point to early colonialists who stayed out of international affairs, but the world is a different place now with multi-conglomerate corporations. Oh, that's right. We won't have corporations. America won't have corporations in the non-capitalist future. The rest of the world will. So they'll get to enjoy McDonald's. We won't. Um, as for ending all foreign wars, you mean wars that we're involved in, or we're just going to end any war out there? Probably wars that we're involved in is what they're meaning. And if someone fights in a war, we're not going to fight. So if this guy named Adolf Hitler comes up and tries to take over Russia and Europe and England, we're just going to sit back and go, hey, dude, it's okay. We don't have a military complex. So if you fight us, we can't fight back, but we're not going to fight you. That's what's going to happen. Do you know what happens next step in that equation? We're going to also support and fully employ veterans. So we're going to get rid of our War Department, but there will be veterans, and we're going to give them support and fully employ them, even though eventually, with no War Department, with no military, no nothing, there won't be any veterans. Interestingly enough, I don't believe Democrats give a shit about veterans today. I really don't think they care. It's interesting, though, it says that they're going to fully employ veterans, even though elsewhere it says that everyone will be working 32 hours a week. So if everyone's working 32 hours a week, that includes veterans, right? So you're just kind of repeating yourself. They're going to end immunity for U.S. war criminals and support the International Criminal Court's mandate to persecute war crimes. So we're not going to have a military. We're not going to fight in any wars, but we're going to sit there on that tribunal mandating the persecution of war criminals in wars we're not fighting in. Wow, little dictator attitude there. But we're not going to persecute our own war criminals. So if you're a U.S. war criminal, we're not going to deal with you. But if you're involved in another war, which we're not fighting, we're going to go after you. Rules for thee, but not for me. Let's see. The other thing we're going to do is, of course, we're going to recognize the rights of the Palestinian people, including the right of return, the right to resist military occupation, and the right to self-determination in a free Palestine with Jerusalem as its capital. That is until the global revolution destroys all of that. We're going to end all military and economic aid to Israel, so screw the Jews. We're going to persecute U.S. and Israeli leaders responsible for the genocide in Gaza. So before we step out of the international war situation, we're going to persecute a bunch of people who are fighting people we don't like, and so Jews are gonna die. That's what it's gonna mean, and whatever. So as I said at the beginning, liberals love violence. So it's really interesting how we aren't just gonna defund our military and step out of international relationships. Before we do that, though, we're gonna persecute a bunch of people. So we're gonna get in a little violence there. We're gonna kill a bunch of people, and then we're gonna step out of it. So we're gonna screw the Jews and then leave. Interesting. I mean, you really do like violence. You just had to get that little bit of violence in there. All right, so let's see. What else is going to happen here? We're going to not interfere with the world, basically, is a sentence here. It says, to quote, people around the world deserve to live their lives without U.S. interference. But yet, earlier in this, it said there would be global movement of this utopian democratic socialist thing. So we're not going to interfere with anyone, but at some point down the road, there is going to be a global democratic socialist movement that will eradicate your society just like it does for America. So at one point, we're not just going to not interfere with you, we're going to destroy your entire life. Can you say contradiction? This could also be viewed as in, well, today we're not going to mess with you, but tomorrow we will. This is another short-term, long-term thing that is all very confusing here. You know, we're going to have renters' rights, but we're still going to have lawyers that could take a landlord to court, even though we're going to have all these rights. So it's like, if you have all the rights, do you still need that lawyer for this weird? It's this weird sense of what are we fighting for today? What are we fighting for tomorrow? And it's very vague here. So we're still going to have workers' parties in a future without parties. We're going to still have the working class in a future without the class, basically. And so we're doing two things at once. And when this, we're also going to end economic welfare against countries whose governments act independently of the U.S., such as Cuba, Venezuela, and Iran. Sorry, I think I misread it. It says economic warfare. So we're not going to have any economic warfare against countries who are working differently than us. I can understand that. That's fair. You do your own thing and I do mine, and I'm not going to send you money. I am fine with that. That was actually what D.O.G.E was about. Interesting enough, liberals hated D.O.G.E. Well, you're taking money from these people, but they're working against us. Isn't that the Democrats? So the Democratic Socialist platform is pro-D.O.G.E. Also, we're going to, in terms of nations, end ICE detention and deportations and punish federal agents' brutality. We're going to punish those federal agents. But remember, down the road, we're not going to have any federal agents because we're going to defund our military and our police. Probably our immigration goes with that too. So before we defund all that stuff, and we won't have any in a few generations, there'll be no policemen. They'll all have died off. Anyone who was like, oh, when I was young, I was a policeman. Sort of like today, when I was young, I was a full of brush salesman. They're all going to die off, but just before they do, we're going to punish all of them. So just before we could have the international scene, we're going to punish those countries. So we're going to end ICE detention, and we're going to have no more deportations, and we're going to punish these federal agents just before we move on and get rid of the whole position. Talk about, wow, having your cake and eat it too. They're going to legalize migration, which is already legal. Migration is legal. You can legally migrate from one country to another. It was even legal in the USSR, but they're going to legalize it, except here's the subtle thing that they're not saying. They're going to legalize all migration, even the legal migration, which is interesting because we're going to, in this Democratic Socialist future, legalize all migration. All migration is legit, but other countries aren't doing that. There's not a country in the world that recognizes 100% of migration. That's going to go well in a country which pays for everything and gives you housing. And if you're a minority, you get all the good stuff and reparations. I guarantee everyone's going to be coming through that border. And there won't be a police system or a military system or a border patrol system to stop anyone. It will just be like walking down the street. So we're going to have so many people who are going to want to come here and live under our state funded world. So they also want to grant amnesty for all immigrants, regardless of status, and provide a path to citizenship for all permanent residents and end visa caps and quotas. So we're going to have all permanent residents become citizens, but we're going to legalize all migration, which is already, and we're going to grant amnesty for all immigrants. So essentially, even if you're not a permanent resident, we're going to give you shit. Oh boy, I'm not done yet. I thought I was going to be done here, but taking me a little while. But let's keep going. So they want to extend full rights, voting rights, excuse me, to, guess what? Those permanent residents. So if you are an immigrant and you come in and we're going to give you voting rights eventually, which actually you can get already. You kind of can get that already. They want to restore the right to vote to people in prison and with criminal convictions, even though they want to get rid of prison. So we're going to give you all the right to vote, but we're also going to get rid of prisons at the same time. And technically, anyone who's currently in prison is currently in prison under the current U.S. Constitution. But if they bring in a democratic constitution, then all the laws that put those people currently in prison no longer exist because that was a different legal system. So technically, anyone who is in prison under the new constitution, can you say they're a criminal? Can you say someone is a criminal of a current country based on the laws of a pre-existing currently non-existing country because the country will no longer exist as it is? I mean, if I went to prison under ancient Egyptian laws and ancient Egypt now doesn't exist, and I just happen to live thousands of years, would you still say I'm a criminal even though that country doesn't exist? Am I considered a criminal under American laws because I broke the laws of a country that doesn't exist? So again, it's past and present things. They're also going to establish statehood for Washington, D.C., and recognize the right to self-determination for all U.S. territories and colonies, and expand and protect voting rights and end voter suppression. Yes, so much voter suppression. You know, the 25% of black people who don't have IDs. They're going to end political corruption because they're going to have the working class govern. It literally says they're going to end political corruption. Good luck with that. Really, really good luck with that because the working class are going to run themselves. And you know, all working class people are good people. And there won't be any corruption. And they're also going to end legalized bribery. Because didn't you know that bribery was currently illegal? Literally. It's like they're also going to get rid of lobbyists, but we won't have a capitalist system anyway, so it won't really matter. And the working class will be making all decisions for the rest of us who aren't working class people in a classless society. They're also going to get rid of dark money because I guess they believe that that's a legal thing. Or, I mean, dark money can be interpreted in a few different ways. And Citizens United is going to be gone, and so are and all elections will, guess what, be publicly financed. So we're going to finance everything except oh my God. They're going to abolish the Electoral College. They're going to replace the President and Supreme Court with an executive and judiciary chosen and subordinate to Congress. So there will be no Electoral College, and Congress will choose who runs the country. But it's. And Congress will be made up of working class people, just your average working class person. Oh boy, so much. So much. So they're going to replace the two-party system with a multi-party democracy. I don't know what to say. I So we're going to have lots of parties in a country that currently has lots of parties. We don't have a two-party system. We have a multi-party system. The problem is that to get to the biggest positions is hard for third parties, and third parties don't last. It's not like we have the anti-Freemason party or the Bull Moose party still hanging out. The modern Whigs consolidated into something else. Small parties can't function for very long. They usually win local elections, if anything. They just don't have the ability to get bigger. Or they're like the Libertarians and run stupid candidates, so they can't win. No, Ron Paul and Gary Johnson did okay, but if we have a two-party system, then how did Ross Perot have the Reform Party? How do we have a Green Party? How do we have a Libertarian Party? We used to have a CPUSA Party. How do we have a Democratic Socialist Party in a country with a two-party system? You see, they don't even know what type of system we have, but they want to replace it with a multi-party democracy. They're going to expand the House of Representatives and implement proportional representation and ranked choice voting in all elections and abolish the Senate. Oh, I live in Portland, Maine. Let me tell you something. Dump ranked choice voting. Just dump it. All right. They are also going to establish, again, are you ready for this? Public ownership of the largest corporations. So all these big companies like Microsoft are now going to be publicly owned. But I can't imagine very many of them are going to last very long under a country where all uh, uh, I can't imagine these companies are going to progress or continue or grow in a non-capitalist environment. Yes, we're all going to publicly own Microsoft, and that stock is going to go up and up and up, except that there'll be no money being made by Microsoft to continue to progress because it's a non-profit in a country that hates capitalism. So, I mean, I'm sure we could point to China and they have publicly owned things, and I'm just not familiar how those things run. And maybe the USSR had publicly owned companies that succeeded. But from my reading, publicly owned companies didn't grow and grow and grow. And taking over a company like when Lenin and Stalin took power, those companies then didn't progress into great, huge things. And if the end result is not to pay off your tax, your stockbrokers, but just to exist and to provide something, but you'll make no profit at it. From what I've read, again, might be wrong, from what I've read, the end result isn't glamorous. And all the companies are owned by the government, too. So the entire government, which is going to be this expanded House of Representatives, is going to run all companies. They're going to run the largest ones, but I said in the last episode they want to get rid of capitalist structures. So I guess even small companies then, why would you allow small companies to exist without government oversight? But you're gonna control the big ones. But the small ones eventually may grow to be big, right? Well, they won't because they can't make any money. So let me tell you something about profit in companies. My dad worked for an engineering company when I grew up. And when times were really good and there was profit, he had more work. When profits were down and we were in an economic crisis or a company just wasn't doing well, he would often find himself looking for another job. So he was a designer for like oil refineries, and he worked on the slope for a while. In Washington State, he'd go down to like the Texaco oil refinery, Arco, and some others. And I like to see he drew on and off switches. It was bad summary of what he did, but he would design electrical systems for these refineries or improved electrical systems and stuff. And when times were good and there was money, that meant the company, the oil refinery, was investing in new technology they wanted to try out. So we're going to get this new electrical system for this new technology that we didn't have money for yesterday. They also expanded things. They were like, let's build this, let's build this. Hey, let's buy another, I don't know, a boat. They improved things. Structures that were old were then rebuilt when they had money and when they had profit, when gas prices were doing well, when oil prices were doing well, whatever. When those things weren't happening, they didn't try the new technology. They didn't have the money. They didn't upgrade old structures. They let the old structures be torn down. They didn't try any innovation. There was no money to try it. No more than if you bring home $3,000 a month and your rent is $2,500, and after groceries, car payment, student loan, you have $50 left. No more than at that point do you book an airplane flight to Vegas and stay at the most expensive hotel. No, you don't, because you don't have the money. No more than you book a $5,000 trip to uh, the Congo and you don't have a credit card, but you're just going to say, hey, I'll just pay for it later once I make $5,000 and save it up on my $50 a month. You don't do that. When you don't have money, you don't spend money, except if you're the US government. You conserve your money. Hey, I'm not going to buy that chocolate cake at the store this week. I'm very concerned. I was poor at one point in New York City. I ate 2 meals a day. I couldn't afford a third. There were times I would eat one. That is how you live. It's the same for business. When a business is doing well, it does things. When a business does not do well, you're not having cast Christmas parties at an expensive restaurant. You cut back. You don't give Christmas bonuses to your employees when you don't make money. I know. I have a friend who was working for a business that wasn't doing well, and the boss came out and said, there'll be no Christmas bonuses this year because we're not making any money. Yet in this Democratic Socialist future, this is what they want. No one's going to have any money and everything's going to be publicly owned. And we're just going to publicly own everything, and everything's going to be free, but it's not going to be free because these things still require money. Because I guess, or unless we have a cashless future, where's that money going to come from? It's going to come from our taxes, and I don't know where else. And if you tax it's going to require like a 200% tax rate to pull all this off. Because we're only going to be working 32 hours a week. These people do not understand economics. So as I said earlier, if I sound arrogant, it's because these people don't understand economics and want to destroy us. They will destroy America. This is their goal. It is scary. It is complete destruction of all of society. It's not to be taken lightly. They believe in this stuff, but they don't look at this stuff. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so they say that they are going to enact aggressive wealth taxes. Excuse me. They're going to enact aggressive wealth taxes on the richest individuals and corporations to spend on public goods and infrastructure. So who is going to pay for everything? The wealthy people. We're going to tax the millionaires. So if you're rich, you're going to be taxed to pay for everything. Except, give it one generation, there'll be no more millionaires. How do you make a millionaire in a non-capitalist society where millionaires get taxed and you're not making enough money to become a millionaire? We're all just making livable minimum wage at $32 an hour. The moment you make more, you're being taxed. You never really can become a millionaire. Now, you could say, well, you buy property, but all property will be publicly owned. There won't be a house you can buy for your Airbnb. It's going to be publicly owned. If you're on the board of directors for a corporation, it will be publicly owned. You can't build an apartment building because that's going to be publicly owned. So all the avenues for making money in this society are going to be gone. So in one generation or two generations, let's say the kids of the millionaires, if the millionaires haven't been taxed out of existence by the time they die, it'll be their kids, there won't be any millionaires. So then who will be paying for this society? According to them, it's just going to be we're just going to have millionaires constantly. All these millionaires are going to be coming. Well, who are we going to tax? So the rich will pay for everything, while the rest of us just sit around and write poetry books all day and go for walks with our dogs. Now, if I was a rich person in this future society, you know what I would do? I would move to another country. I would do the Rosie O'Donnell and Ellen DeGeneres thing and leave for the safety of my life. Except that they want global revolution. So all those rich oil miners, not oil miners, oil Mongols in Saudi Arabia, gone. Your oil will probably be publicly owned. You're not going to be rich anymore, and we're going to tax you out of existence. It's going to be an aggressive wealth tax, which I mean, quite a high tax. So you won't be rich. If you're 20 years old today, maybe when you retire, maybe when you die at 90, you'll still have some money left. But they'll tax you into your deathbed. That's the plan. You won't be rich by the time you die. All these rich people all around the world. China, sorry, the revolution's coming for you too, China. So you're all going to be taxed out of existence. The fun for the working class, which won't exist in a working class society without working class. So the last little bit on this is actually the last little bit. It says they're going to empower workers to come together and fight the boss in this classless society. They're going to protect, expand, and enforce the rights of all workers to form, join, and strike with their unions, regardless of industry. So I guess we're all going to have unions. We're all going to work 32-hour work weeks. We're going to live in a classless society, but yet we're going to fight in unions and strike against the bosses in this classless society. But there will still be classes in the classless society. We're going to strike against the millionaires. And do they know that unions these days are corrupt? They started off legit, and sometimes they are, but other times they're corrupt. Ever heard of Jimmy Hoffa? So, the Democratic Socialists are going to support union members who organize and take political action. My question, though, is that the goal of unions, to be political, or is it to provide better rights? They actually say take political action. So we're all going to fight with our union for our rights, even though we'll have full benefits, 32-hour work weeks, and nothing more, no overtime. We'll get probably amazing sick leave. We'll have free health care, free college, no debt, $100 a month rent. We'll have everything you could possibly want in this world, but we're still going to fight our bosses with the unions for workers' rights. Be interested to know what rights we're going to be fighting for. Interesting, though, that they want unions. They actually want unions in this future. They don't want to abolish them, even though unions are often highly questionable. And we won't need unions in a classless society anyways, right? No, it all comes back to we have this workers' party. Anyways, that's the end of my list. I have now literally gone through the entire Democratic Socialist platform. You can find this online, which I read. You see these pictures. Just you'll find these on their website. I printed everything out. I didn't skip anything. I wanted to be ultra clear here that these people are the end of society as you know it, not just the improvement, but the end of. Actually, they may improve a few things. As I said at the beginning, there's some ideas that they have, which I agree with. I got it. But destroying everything for me is not the solution. But as I said, liberals love violence. Liberals love destruction. I think they get off on it. I really, really do. So for them to destroy all of society, for me, kind of makes sense. It makes sense that before they get rid of the police, they're going to punish the police. Before they get rid of ICE, they're going to punish ICE. Before we walk away from international affairs, we're going to punish people. Really love violence. You see so many contradictions in their game plan. It really looks like, as I said, a committee wrote this and threw everything in, and they wouldn't take anything out because that would be offensive to somebody, and then they would cry and want a safe space and need some Play-Doh. So we have to include stuff in this that contradicts other things in this. Now, some people will say, why even waste my time with this? It's not going to happen. We're never going to have a 99% Congress of Democratic Socialists that will vote themselves out of a job. We're never going to have millionaires sitting in Congress going, yes, I wish to vote laws that get rid of millionaires. We're never going to have that happen. The problem is, we may never have the society they want, but they seem to have some influence on the next generation, the youth, the people who are idealists, haven't gone out in the world enough to see that these things don't work. They will take the ideas and incorporate them into what happens next for the Democratic Party. And those ideas will then become mainstream. And some of these are very dangerous ideas. It's sort of like how the Libertarian Party has sort of died out because it became a part of the Republican Party. So the Koch brothers, I forget which one, David Koch, ran for uh, vice president on the Libertarian platform around the time of Ron Paul, or maybe he was Ron Paul's running mate. I forget right now. Him and his brother realized that they weren't getting anything done by being in this third party. So you can literally see this transition where they brought their ideas to the Democrats and got involved in sorry. The Koch brothers brought their ideas to the Republican Party. And you see a very clear change at one point where suddenly, almost verbatim, all these very libertarian ideas, like the whole platform for the Koch brothers, suddenly found itself in the Republican platform. And then the next time they did a platform, a little bit more was in there and a little bit more. And today, if you look at the Republican platform of 2026 versus, let's say, the Republican platform of 1980, they look very different. And it's not just because society has changed, but it's because there was this little group that went in and started changing it and changing it and changing it. And today, the Republican Party is nothing like it was in 1980. It's not the Christian Coalition anymore. It's not dominated by Christians. It is much more of a libertarian group. It's much younger. It's dramatically changed. Anyone who says that Republicans are the same as they always were hasn't watched anything by Republicans in a long time. It's a very different party now than the days of William F. Buckley when I was young. The old guard is gone. We have a new guard. Yeah, some of the new guard is questionable, like Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens, but you wouldn't have them in 1980. You wouldn't have Candace Owens in 1980. You wouldn't have others. It's changed. The party's changed, good and bad. Well, that's what's going to happen here. The Democratic Socialists won't gain ground. They don't have the support that they think they do. And if you do support them, you are asking for your own destruction. That's why I'm making these videos, to warn you. But what they'll do is they'll take their ideas and they'll put them in the Democratic Party, and that's how they'll gain ground because the Democratic Party isn't going anywhere. Even though that's going to make the Democratic Party more and more extreme, so maybe at some point it will go someplace. But that's what's going to happen. The ideas are going to go mainstream. Some of them are okay. There's ideas here that are great. God knows I would rather work 32 hours and write poetry than 47 and a half and be, or 37 and a half and be miserable sometimes. I understand that. But can you make that for every single person in the world? No. Plus, I'd like to buy a house someday, which means making more money right now is kind of interest to me. I don't want a big house. 200,000 would be fine. I saw a house just the other day. I was looking online. It was a $200,000 house. It was amazing. It's everything I could ever want. But if I can't make money, I can never get that house. Because under our current system, houses aren't free, and I'm not a minority. Well, I am 4% of my DNA is black, so I guess I'm actually black and oppressed because I don't come to grips with my 4% DNA from Africa, which I've had verified on 2 DNA tests. Um, that's not the future we live in, and I'm not getting reparations anytime soon. And actually, part of my family was in Germany in 1900 and wasn't in America, so I never held slaves or never was related to slaves or something. Anyways, that's not happening. So I'd like to buy a house. I need money. And in this system, I can make money. Under their system, I can't make money. I can't buy that house. It's done. It's over. Or I'll be given a publicly owned house. What happens when I do something that the neighbors don't like? You think HOAs are bad? Wait till your house is publicly owned. So I'm warning you about this and dissecting this because things in it could come true. And it's the destruction of everything you love and hold dear. And it needs to be called out. Also, it's completely illogical. Their things contradict. We found numerous contradictions. They want this and this. They want this and that. They want classes in a classless society. They want to tax millionaires in a system that won't have millionaires. So it shows you where their mind is. They're not thinking logically through this. They're just putting every idea on paper and I think avoiding a few that are too extreme. I think they're trying to play nice here and rope in people. But I'm warning you and pointing out the hypocrisy here that is inherent in their agenda for your own benefit. So, anyways, that's where I'm going to end today's show. Thank you for sitting with me. I didn't realize this show was going to go longer than my last one. Uh, but I wanted to just put the full agenda out there for anyone who wants to see it and wants to know about it or hasn't seen it already. So, Democratic Socialists, the party that will destroy society and bankrupt society, and will tell you what to do. And with that, I'm going to say thank you for watching. Yeah, we got some great episodes down the road. I hope you enjoyed this 2-part episode. And with that, have a good day at work, whatever you do, wherever you are. Please subscribe to the channel or feel free to check it out on some other uh, avenues where I share the show after the fact. And we're speaking unfiltered here about society, trying to dig to the ultimate goal, the ultimate agenda. So thank you for hanging out with me, and I will see you later.